Hello and welcome to my tour. So for this tour, I'm going to be focusing on the second strategy out of the three strategies that I identified throughout my personal project. So the second strategy focuses on icons and heroes. So the main description of icons and hero strategy. So for this, I determined that it was the use of historical references when we recognize characters, monuments, dates, important dates such as 9/11, and this sort of prompts the viewer to understand something about the piece and sort of immediately understand the message. Now, in addition to historical figures, pop culture and pop culture icons are also used to communicate this message. So, for example, singers that are trending at the moment, or possibly video game characters, just really anybody that the viewer would relate to. Now, as I mentioned in my previous tours, the viewer really likes it when they're able to see a figure or a date that they identify with, as it really just captivates them and inspires them to sort of understand the message, and it draws their attention, which is the goal. So, just to outline what was stated before, the first example could be historical figures, second, famous monuments, third, pop culture icons, and fourth, pop culture references, and in addition to this, historical dates. So over here, this is the work of popular street artist C plus S. So what's cool about C plus S is that these initials are not only his name, but they also represent collage and stencils. So the relationship between this name and his work is because C plus S commonly uses collage and stencil techniques in all of his pieces. So this particular piece is from his line of work called Les Beautés Timbrées. So this was a movement that he launched where he would sort of portray confident women stencils and he would place their stencil atop of Marianne stamps. So in French culture, the Marianne is basically the ultimate symbol of freedom and liberty. And through an interview with C plus S, I found that the message he wanted to communicate was that he wanted to compare the women in his Beauté Timbrée to the Marianne to sort of empower them and show them as these symbols of liberty and freedom, just like the Marianne. However, just like in all art, C plus S said that this message is up for interpretation. And so for this specific piece, C plus S decided to portray Amy Winehouse as one of his confident women. And so he depicts her in front of British stamps instead of the Marianne. And so British stamps have the Queen on them, and the message for this is unclear, but I presume that it's the same reasoning as with Les Beautés Timbrées. So this is a really good example of a pop culture reference, as Amy Winehouse is a Grammy Award winning singer and people really know her name. And so just by seeing her, we're immediately captivated to sort of want to understand the message behind it. Like, why is she put in front of all these stamps? I spotted this particular mural while walking around the Montmartre area in the 18th arrondissement. So specifically, this mural is on Rue Véron, just off of Rue Le Pic, which is a very touristy area. And there's not a lot of street art examples in that area just because it's very easy for it to get removed, as sort of Paris wants to really keep that traditional ambiance for that street. So this is a really good example of a pop culture reference being used. This is Michael Jackson, considered the king of pop. And so for him to be depicted at such a large scale, not only does this really draw in the viewer, but it also sort of elevates the mood for this very quiet, out of the way road. And this is sort of the goal for a lot of street artists. They want their art to be noticed, and they want a platform to voice their opinions and voice what they find beautiful. And so for this artist, it was definitely Michael Jackson, and they probably found him as a very good source of inspiration. So this specific piece isn't so much of a direct reference, however, it does fall into the historical reference part. So I found through an explanation from street art expert Cass Chaclon that the flags depicted in this mural are meant to sort of represent the monarchy flags, back when France was actually a monarchy. And this was a mural created by artist Faith 47. So Faith 47 is a South African street artist, and her main focus is murals and sort of these very large scale productions in which she's often commissioned. So this obviously took her quite a long time, and it was not just done overnight. Now, Faith 47 takes a lot of inspiration from horses and free spirit. A lot of her murals have horses involved in them. Now, for this specific piece, the horse was used to represent sort of the violently free spirit of France, and much like a horse, just really untamed and reckless, such as the horse being depicted in this photo. However, it was sort of a comment on the way that our society is turning and how sort of the monarchy flags are impaling the horse, meaning that the France's sort of revolutionary spirit is being tamed by monarchy, or in today's world, possibly the government. And a fun fact about this mural is that, as you can see, the two sort of puzzle pieces depicted above the horse were from street artist Smile. Now, these were originally placed where the mural is. However, Faith 47 had the decency, and she didn't have to do this, but she still decided to place them to the side instead of completely getting rid of them. Now, to steer away from the Montmartre sort of neighborhood, here we changed to the 13th arrondissement, specifically on Rue de la Butte aux Cailles. So, during research, I have found that Rue de la Butte aux Cailles is an area extremely concentrated in street art, and I found a lot of the examples for numerous tours in this specific location. Now, here we see a piece by Sohan_Street. Now, this artist is a very new artist to the scene, and I've seen from their Instagram that they're sort of more of an up and coming artist. However, their pieces are also very interesting, and this specific piece categorizes into strategy 2 and number 1, as we're able to see the Louis Vuitton monogram and sort of the mentioning of brands in order to draw the viewer in. Now, Salvador Dali is a surrealist artist that got very famous during the 20th century, particularly the second half of the 20th century, for his surrealist paintings. And he was a very big source of inspiration to artists all around, so I wouldn't be surprised if he influenced street art movements. I know that a lot of street art was influenced from New Realism, in which old posters and old ads and sort of products that were not being used were utilized in order to act as social commentary. Now, one of the first original street artists, Jacques Virager, decided to use this medium. For example, he would take ads that were no longer being used, and through a collage technique, he would portray the revisited ad on the streets. And this was supposed to act as a social commentary. And as we're able to see, this is completely applicable to street art today. And so we're able to see sort of his roots. Now, this piece really falls into strategy number 2, as it's obviously a historical reference. It references this historical figure, Salvador Dali, who was, as stated before, very important. So through my research in the Butte aux Cailles area, I found that a lot of prolific and sort of extremely sought after street artists such as Mystique did a lot of their work here. And this is when I came across Smile. Now, Smile is easily distinguishable through his painting technique, in which he uses these sort of strokes and almost trying to make them look old and make them look dated. Now, this specific piece is of Van Gogh, an extremely popular painter. Now, once again, linking back to the previous piece about Salvador Dali, Van Gogh was also a painter that inspired people. Now, this specific piece by Smile is a recreation of Van Gogh's 1887 painting Self-Portrait with a gray felt hat. So it's clear to see how this categorizes into strategy number 2, as this is obviously a historical reference from a very famous painting and a very famous painter. And Smile really does a good job at portraying this and adapting it to his own style with the color scheme and the technique used. So staying consistent to the Butte aux Cailles location, here we've got another example from the 13th arrondissement, specifically on Rue Gérard. Now, this piece is realized by street artist Oja. Now, I've seen many examples by this artist, and she likes to sort of commemorate these women in these different types of pieces. Now, I've seen an example of Catherine Deneuve, and each time she includes a quote, either from a TV show or an interview that they did, but something that has somewhat of a cultural relevance that the viewer is then able to understand. Now, for this specific piece, this is a portrait of Sigourney Weaver, who is a very famous actress, very prominent pop culture icon, especially in the 90s. Now, Sigourney Weaver stars in the movie Alien, and that's where this quote comes from. And this is a really good example of strategy number two, because not only does this use a famous quote, but it also uses a pop culture icon. And yeah, it really just sort of encapsulates strategy number two. So if you continue on Rue Gérard in the 13th arrondissement, you may stumble upon this piece, which is a recent installation by K-Ball, who is a quite recent street artist who plays around with this sort of mosaic technique similar to the Invader. Now, we can see that this is quite an intricate design, and first of all, directly linking to strategy number two, this is the use of not a historical or pop culture icon, but sort of like a political icon, a very prominent figure in our society, especially in France. Now, this is Emmanuel Macron. So, you may or may not know, but the famous figure being depicted in this piece is Emmanuel Macron, President of France. And so, wordplay is utilized in this piece in order to communicate a message to the audience. So, as we're able to see, the phrase Veni Vidi Vici is sort of played around with. Now, Veni Vidi Vici directly translates from Latin to I came, I saw, I conquered. And now this phrase is very popular and well known. However, not everybody may know that this is actually popularized by Julius Caesar in Roman times. Now, COVID is one of the biggest problems that our society is facing today. It's been going on for almost 3 years, and so it is no surprise that street artists are now starting to implement it into their work and into their societal criticisms. So, Emmanuel Macron, who is the star of this portrait, has been heavily scrutinized and criticized by the media for his approach to dealing with COVID-19 and all of the strict measures that were put in place and almost enforcing the vaccine, which is controversial to some people. And so here we're able to see Veni Covidi Vici, and this is really just wordplay to sort of like tie Emmanuel Macron and COVID together and sort of put it into one piece. And this is a very recent installation, and I was actually only able to see this on the very last time that I visited the Butokai area. So this really just speaks to how sort of fast-paced and ever-changing the street art scene is. So if you go to the places that are listed on my tour, some of the pieces may not even be there anymore, and you may see new ones. And so that's sort of the beauty of the street art scene. So just next to Rue Gérard, we have Rue Bourg in the 13th arrondissement. So we have this piece by L_Rafou, who is a street artist primarily based in Lyon. That's where the majority of his works are. And so this is not that much of a recent installation, but this is somewhat of a new collection for El Rafou. And so in this, we're able to see a very cultural reference with the use of Marianne, which is really the ultimate symbol of sort of freedom and liberty, as I stated before, with the example of the Bouteille Timbrée with C+S. Now, for this specific example, I went to L_Rafou's social media account, and he stated that the interpretation for this piece was that sort of like a modernized Marianne. So this representation isn't so much of a social criticism or a governmental criticism, but more of just a accurate and modern depiction of the Marianne. So the Marianne is really just the embodiment of French beliefs such as liberté, fraternité, égalité, and really just like a war hero or rising above. And so this is just modernized, as in there's more modern weaponry, and it's really showing how much we've progressed with in military and with weaponry advancements. And so El Rafou really wanted to portray this development through the modernization of the Marianne, which is such a timeless symbol. And so this is a perfect example of the second strategy, as it's a cultural reference and also a historical reference. So by going to the 4th arrondissement, specifically in the Marais region on Rue Vieille du Temple, we're going to be able to see this piece by The Invader. Now, as stated in my previous tour about the first strategy, which was codifying a logo, now, Invader is one of the most important and sort of most notorious French street artists in the world. He's one of the first street artists to have sent a piece of street art to space. And amongst other achievements, he also has 2,000, actually, no, he has 1,500 pieces in only Paris, and this is one of them. And so this is somewhat of a cultural reference as it refers to the movie Alice in Wonderland, which is quite a popular movie. I'm pretty sure everybody has seen this movie. It's very, very popular with multiple adaptations. This specific piece is from the original, which was released in 1951, so quite an old movie. And we're able to see the same characteristics for the Cheshire Cat, which is sort of this purple cat with these blue stripes and this extremely wide grin. Now, this ticks all of the boxes for strategy number 2, and we're able to see that this is obviously a pop culture reference. So, quite similar to Faith 47, Glaçon likes to do these very large scale productions. Now, this is apparent if we continue down Rue Vieille du Temple, we'll find this very large mural of Maradona, who is this very important and influential figure in football. Now, Maradona is said to be one of the best football players to have ever lived, playing for teams such as Argentina and just really being one of the best players out there. Now, this is an obvious example of strategy number 2, as they're using such a important and relevant cultural icon, especially since Maradona was deceased about a year ago. It's sort of almost a memorial and commemorating him for his achievements when he was alive. So G-Sup, the artist behind this, is looking to engage with people on the street, as his main goal is to sort of get them off of their phones, because he has many concern about today's society and how we're too involved in technology, and his main goal is to stop people from doing this and take a look around for a change. So this octopus figure is heavily inspired by the Sega video game Wonder Boy that Jizup grew a liking to, and he really decided to incorporate that into his street art. And so he utilizes this silhouette and places pop culture references within it. And if you look around in Paris, you'll see many of these. This specific example was located in the Marais, but I've seen one on Place Costa Rica in the 16th, and in Montmartre, in the 13th, in Butokai. It's very high concentration of these. So the reference in this specific octopus is the Mona Lisa. Now the Mona Lisa, as we all know, is very emblematic of French culture, of Paris. It's located in the Louvre, and it's one of the most famous pieces of art in the world. So back at Butokai in the 13th arrondissement, we're able to see this very large-scale pasted mural. And so this piece is by Combo CK, and it's a historical reference to an extremely famous and iconic painting by Johannes Vermeer, The Girl with the Pearl Earring. The piece is one of the most famous paintings in the world, and this is sort of his interpretation. Now Combo CK really sort of created this to celebrate different cultures and to show people that different cultures were beautiful in the same way that this painting is considered to be one of the most beautiful in the world. And so this is an obvious use of strategy number 2 with an extreme cultural reference. So this particular piece is located under the Pont d'Alma in the 8th arrondissement, created by street artist Cette Nuit. So Cette Nuit used the stencil technique in order to create this piece. And so an interesting fact about this is that Cette Nuit had originally put in a stencil in another spot in this under the bridge, and it was covered up. And so Cette Nuit decided obviously to repaint it. However, he was really conflicted because he didn't really want to involve himself in dialogue with this person who's going to keep on covering his work. And through my interview with a street artist, I was able to find that this is really the nature of street art, how you can't control how people are going to react to your piece, people are going to cover it up, what people are going to do with it. So you really just have to be prepared to do anything. So in this particular instance, Cette Nuit decided to repaint his stencil. And this piece is obviously very important and emotionally charged message, because this is actually the site where in 1997, Princess Diana was involved in a fatal car accident. And I decided to include this in my tour because I felt that it was really important and it sort of acted as a memorial piece for Princess Diana, which I found to be quite influential and really quite emotional. And I categorized this piece into the second strategy, which was the use of historical figures in order to communicate a message. As we are obviously able to see, there is the use of a historical figure. So with that last piece, this actually concludes my tour. So if you have any questions or any inquiries concerning street art or considering my research, feel free to contact me on my school email. It's right here. And yeah, thank you for watching.